Kim Jong Un is the world's most dangerous dictator. Boss of a ruthless communist dynasty that has ruled North Korea for 75 years.
There is this perception that he is a cartoon character, kind of Dr. Evil villain, right? But Kim Jong Un really is no joke. He is a ruthless dictator, hell-bent on staying in power.
Early in his rule, Kim Jong Un wiped out his enemies, then supercharged his nuclear arsenal. But Kim's greatest challenge lies ahead. The world is changing. To survive, Kim must change with it and bring his country into the modern age.
How far can he stray from what his father and his grandfather have created in trying to portray himself as a modern leader without losing control?
From the rogue nation of North Korea as new reports surface that Pyongyang is preparing for its next nuclear test.
North Korea is showing the world its new intercontinental ballistic missile.
This comes after President Trump said a major conflict with North Korea is possible.
Little rocket man. We can't have madmen out there shooting rockets all over the place.
In 2017, Kim Jong Un achieved his family's long-standing ambition, developing a nuclear missile capable of striking North Korea's mortal enemy, the United States.
My name is Jung Pak. I used to work at the CIA on Korea issues. The premier product that we would produce is the President's Daily Brief, which I wrote often. The toughest part is leadership intentions. When it comes to what's in somebody's mind, that is the most difficult part. I spent my entire career trying to crawl inside Kim Jong Un's head. What we learned is that not only was he an apt student of the legacy of his grandfather and father, but that he was also bigger, badder, and bolder in terms of how aggressive he was. The missiles and his weapons are now more powerful, more dangerous, more reliable, and more mobile. And that's what makes North Korea under Kim Jong Un a much scarier place and a much scarier adversary.
But Kim has a problem. Cut off from the outside world, his country's economy is on its knees.
North Korea has been facing U.S. sanctions since the Korean War, and they've just gotten progressively tougher and tougher. So it's a real struggle, I think, for Kim Jong Un to push his country forward. This is a country that has a chronic food shortage, it's isolated from the outside world. Kim Jong Un knows that in the long run, it's untenable for him to provide for his people.
To bring his country into the modern age and maintain his grip on power, Kim must lift the US-led sanctions banning international trade with North Korea. In 2018, he makes his opening move.
On June 12th, in Singapore, I'll be meeting with Kim Jong Un to pursue a future of peace and security for the world, for the whole world.
In 2018, Kim leaves Korea for only the third time as leader for a historic meeting with President Trump in Singapore.
The Singapore summit, it really was his big debut internationally. Kim Jong Un's coming out. Those were incredible scenes. I think that's a very telling example of the image that he wants to portray to his people. He's saying, actually, I'm very charming, I'm funny, I'm flexible, I'm spontaneous, and it's completely the reverse of what we may have thought of the North Korean leader.
In Singapore, North Korea's reclusive dictator takes his first steps on the world stage.
I'm John Bolton. I was a national security advisor for President Trump. For me, it was almost surreal to think that this was actually happening. A mistake in my view, but it was a historic first. It was very clear in the meeting that Kim was very much in control. He was observing Trump very carefully. Early in the meeting, Kim asked Trump, "What do you think of me?" Just testing people like that shows a level of confidence. I mean, what do you think of me is an invitation to say, you're a tyrannical dictator oppressing 25 million people, and I don't trust a word you say. That would have been an accurate answer, but it could have been a meeting stopper.
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. How's the meeting going so far, sir?
But of course, Trump gave him a very glowing review. He was smart and so on and so forth.
Any progress, Mr. President? Excellent relationship. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Kim comes prepared with a strategy for dealing with the American president.
There's a kind of magic that can happen when these two leaders get together. And I have to say, what I saw, it looked like a bromance. The North Koreans studied whatever they could to try to understand how President Trump thinks. His psychology, how to flatter him, and actually the North Koreans know how to do that very, very well. Kim Jong Un sent an envoy with a massive handwritten letter. North Korea is very old school, in a sense. They're not going to send email attachments. They're very formal. It was something that charmed President Trump that he got this massive handwritten letter.
It was kind of a rambling conversation. I was mostly worried that Trump not give away too much, but there was discussion about joint South Korea and U.S. war games, as Trump called them, which he agreed to give up. It was a concession to Kim that none of us on the U.S. side knew was coming.
Okay.
It obviously made Kim very happy.
Thank you very much. It's fantastic. I was really being tough, and so was he. And we would go back and forth, and then we fell in love, okay? No, really. He wrote me beautiful letters, and they're great letters. We fell in love.
Kim has begun to reinvent himself as a legitimate world leader. He returns to his people a conquering hero.
The United States is North Korea's chief adversary. It is the central enemy. So if Kim can stand shoulder to shoulder with the U.S. president, that is of itself a kind of victory. Kim Jong Un can tell his people, we are taken seriously by the most powerful leader in the world.
During the course of 2018, Kim Jong Un has proven himself to be very savvy and calculating in the way he has dealt with the outside world, luring Donald Trump out. Kim Jong Un kind of set off a race to meet him. Xi Jinping in China, nobody wanted to be left out. We suddenly saw this huge flurry of summits taking place, and it seemed like all of the leaders wanted to meet with Kim Jong Un.
North Korea is a very impoverished country, but it has nuclear weapons. Kim Jong Un can blow up half the planet if he chooses to in a major war. And that's what gives him a huge leverage that otherwise he would never have. When he met with Putin in Russia, Putin is very famous for meeting leaders across the world very, very late. Well, in Vladivostok, it was Putin who waited for Kim Jong Un. He wants to show the world that, you know what, even between friends, we have the upper hand.
But opening his secretive hermit kingdom to the outside world carries dangers for Kim Jong Un. At the start of his rule, he encouraged foreigners to set up businesses in special trading zones near the Chinese border. One of the first outsiders to arrive was South Korean-born U.S. citizen Kim Dong-chul.
외국인들만 숙소할 수 있는 그런 호텔을 제가 운영을 하게 된 겁니다. 이제 미국 CIA가 찾았던 것 같아요. 그때 당시에는 김정은이에 대한 권력의 취향이라든지 거절을 했다가 이 조국을 위해서 하는 일이기 때문에 당신이 반드시 일을 해줘야 된다. 그러한 부분들 중에서 가장 핵심적인 것이 바로 이 핵 활동에 대해서 무슨 방사포가 있는지 핵 관련 과학자, 핵 시설을 감당하는 경비대원을 내가 미션을 할 때마다 어떤 그런 불안감도 있고. 저는 특수한 시계를 받았고 아주 초정밀적으로 이렇게 돼 있었는데 이런 그 시계 이 뭐라 그럴까 이게 시간을 표기하는 뭐 도청 장치도 받았고 또 다른 그 만년필로 된 그 녹음기가 또 있습니다. 이런 것들.
It's believed Kim Dong-chul passed secrets to the CIA for 4 years before he was betrayed by an informant and arrested. Kim Jong Un makes a very public example of his captive.
6개월을 받는 동안에 이제 상당한 고문으로 인해서 정말 엄청난 고통 속에 있다가 결국은 이제 기자회견을 하고 이게 마음은 상당히 이제 가벼워지는 그런 상황에 왔고 그때 한 6개월 동안에 조사받았던 그 고통스러움이 그 순간에 다 물거품이 되고 없어져 버리는 거죠.
The agent was sentenced to 10 years hard labor. He had become a pawn in an international chess game between Kim and the West. 2 years later, Kim meets with U.S. hostage negotiators to build on his warming relationship with President Trump.
And we do have breaking news right now. President Trump tweeting moments ago that 3 detained Americans have been released from North Korea.
비행기 안에 들어와 보니까 북한 상공을 딱 벗어나니까 그때 기내에서 방송이 나오는 거죠. 그 비행기에 타고 있던 많은 사람들이 환호하고 제가 이제 워싱턴에 도착을 해서 대통령이라고 해서 어떤 분이 이제 올라오신다고 얘기를 하는데 나는 이분인지는 난 몰랐죠. 오바마 대통령 시절에 내가 붙들려 갔기 때문에 어프렌셜 쇼를 본 적이 없습니다. 완전히 이제 미국으로 안전하게 귀국한 것이 이제 이때 아주 실감이 나더라고요.
In releasing his hostages, Kim Jong-un bolsters his image as a modern civilized leader and buys credit with President Trump.
I want to thank Kim Jong Un, who really was excellent to these 3 incredible people. I really think he wants to do something and bring that country into the real world.
February 2019, Kim Jong-un sets out on a 2,500-mile journey. The destination, Vietnam, and a second crucial meeting with President Trump. The prize, winning a deal to lift the economic sanctions crippling his country.
When he went to Hanoi, I think he felt very confident. He very unusually announced through the state media in North Korea that this summit was going to happen, that he thought this was all going to go very well for him.
You know, the stakes were very, very high. From Kim Jong-un's side, he wanted to show his people that, you know what? I will make peace with Donald Trump. I will be the one North Korean leader who shakes hands and signs a deal with the U.S. president. That was the promise Kim Jong-un made as he left the train station in Pyongyang.
On the first night of the summit, the two leaders meet for a dinner of North Korean steak, served well done for Trump and rare for Kim.
So this was the dinner before the summit, the night before. Kim Jong Un looks very comfortable and confident, and he must have put on a bit of a show. President Trump relayed a story that Kim Jong Un told about how, yeah, he executed his uncle and then displayed his head for the rest to see. In this day and age, to see that kind of brutality, very much like the heads of those beheaded by Henry VIII were stuck outside the Tower of London.
Very interesting dialogue. About 30 minutes.
Boy, if you could have heard that dialogue, what you would pay for that dialogue, that was good.
I think it goes to show that Kim Jong Un, deep inside, wanted to reach out to Donald Trump in a way that no other leader had reached out to Donald Trump, which is, you know what, Mr. President? Let's talk about raw power. I will tell you what raw power is. I will give you an example of what I did to my uncle. Donald Trump respects raw power, and that's what Kim Jong Un wanted to emphasize.
There are a lot of great ideas being thrown about. I think very importantly, the relationship is, just very strong.
With the dinner table talk out of the way, the two leaders get down to business.
Analysts say there is considerable pressure on both Trump and Kim Jong Un to come up with a more substantive deal than the one they struck in Singapore. Kim desperately needs sanctions to be lifted. Trump has got to come back with something more substantive than they got in June.
Chairman Kim, are you ready to denuclearize?
If I'm not willing to do that, I won't be here right now.
The North Koreans estimated that President Trump needed a foreign policy victory and that they would sign a deal. Kim Jong Un thought it was a sure thing. So they got down to the nitty-gritty of this nuclear deal. But it can quickly go sour.
In his opening gambit, Kim offers a limited deal to shut down North Korea's largest nuclear testing site in return for the complete lifting of all sanctions.
Trump was not prepared to make a partial deal. He was prepared to make only the big deal, which is the complete elimination of North Korea's nuclear weapons program. But Kim kept pressing for his more limited deal. Like many communist negotiators, he's very good at saying the same thing over and over again. The Germans have a word for it. They call it Sitzfleisch. And it means exactly what it sounds like, that he'd just be prepared to sit there for as long as it took. So Trump and Kim went around and around. We could see the frustration that Kim felt that he wasn't getting through. So there came a point where kind of silence descended on the room and lasted, and it was at that point I think everybody realized this meeting is really over.
Astonishing. The second summit between the U.S. and North Korea is over.
The headline here, no deal.
The two leaders' motorcades roared away from the summit site within minutes of each other.
Sometimes you have to walk.
They literally left a lunch on the table in Hanoi and went off back to their respective capitals. So I think it was a miscalculation.
Kim Jong Un was very, very sure he could reach a deal in Hanoi. So on the long train ride back to North Korea, Kim Jong Un must have asked himself, who am I going to blame for this failure? Who will be the person who will fall by the sword?
Kim Jong Un was very angry. He lost faith in that he didn't have a deal. He left empty-handed, and that has increased the pressure on Kim Jong Un since.
Failure to reach a deal with Trump is a major setback in Kim's bid to normalize his regime. At least 3 of his officials are thought to have been executed or purged as punishment. Kim was returning to the system of terror that has sustained his dynasty for 3 generations.
In North Korea, the border is not just solid, it is highly impenetrable. Except for that joint security area where there is no fence. A North Korean soldier called Oh Chung-sung, the top soldier in the Korean People's Army, stationed right along the 38th parallel. Only the creme de la creme are posted along the border. But he dashed across the line, running for his life. He was shot at by North Korean guards.
As the North Korean soldier lies wounded in the demilitarized zone, which separates North and South Korea, troops stage a rescue attempt.
He was miraculously saved. He was then taken by helicopter to a Korean hospital. It was discovered that there were many worms in his body. He was a healthy soldier who got the best treatment in North Korea, but he was still suffering from malnutrition. And this was a shock to many people who were watching what's happening in North Korea. This particular video must have shown Kim Jong Un that security along the border was paramount because even the most trusted lieutenants were ready to jump ship. I think Kim Jong Un would have been very angry at the generals who allowed this to happen under their watch. And I'm sure they were reprimanded and imprisoned or even, even worse punishment for this.
To clamp down on a rising tide of defectors, Kim has increased border security and threatened would-be traitors with severe punishments. But the dictator remains torn between his allegiance to the family dynasty and the pull of his teenage years in the democratic West. Shortly after he took power, he tracked down an old friend in Europe.
Plötzlich waren Leute von ihm bei mir im Restaurant und haben eigentlich gesagt, ja, wir sind auf Anordnung von ihm da. Er möchte Sie gerne wiedersehen und können Sie morgen nach Nordkorea fliegen. Es war einfach unwirklich. Ich bin Joao Michaelo, wie man es halt weiß. Also ich war früher in der Schule mit Kim Jong Un. War ich halt wirklich sein bester Kollege. Ja, wir haben sicher zusammen viel gelacht. Ab und zu am Nachmittag mal Videospiele gespielt oder irgendwelche Filme geschaut. Haben wir zusammen, also mit ihm habe ich angefangen zu rauchen. Das glaube ich schon, dass es ziemlich unbeschwert war. Wo wir losgefahren sind, war es ziemlich dunkel. Und dann sind wir wieder in eine Tiefgarage rein und ewig da rumgefahren und dann durch verschiedenste Räume und dann waren wir dann da. Er ist dann um die Ecke gekommen, dann haben wir uns schon umarmt, er hat sich gefreut, gekommen bin.
When you spent your most formative years in a very westernized country, studying in Switzerland as a teenager, that will stick with you, is this nostalgia.
Haben wir kurz zusammen Basketball gespielt. Also. Ich habe ihm dann auch gleich gesagt, ich glaube, wo ich den Basketball gesehen habe, habe ich gesagt, du weißt, ich habe schon ewig nicht mehr gespielt.
He will never be able to have that life back again, but if he invites his childhood friend to come back to North Korea, it's like satisfying a part of his life that he yearns for, but he can never replay.
Dann haben wir eigentlich am Tisch über die frühere Zeit geredet und wie es mir geht, über mein Leben, weil er wollte halt wissen, was ich so mache oder was ich gemacht habe. Es war ein bisschen etwas koreanisch dabei, aber sie haben eigentlich vielleicht, um mir eine Freude zu machen oder vielleicht auch aus Angst, dass ich es nicht mag, es gab auch ein Fondue. Und dann habe ich mal so ganz schüchtern gefragt, ja, ob ich dann schnell eine rauchen dürfte. Und er hat gesagt, ja, natürlich. Wir haben zusammen angefangen, wir werden auch zusammen aufhören.
Kim's two meetings with the U.S. president had failed to deliver a deal on North Korea's nuclear arsenal. In June 2019, Trump rekindles the bromance.
President Trump touching down in South Korea just a short while ago after having extended an apparently impromptu invitation to the leader of North Korea.
I just put out a feeler because I don't know where he is right now. He may not be in North Korea, but I said if Chairman Kim would want to meet, I'll be at the border. It's certainly, we seem to get along very well.
The meeting at the DMZ was entirely impromptu. He tweets an invitation to the North Korean dictator to meet. And North Koreans finally do respond. And Donald Trump marveled that apparently Kim Jong Un follows me on Twitter.
After the breakdown of the talks in Hanoi, Kim Jong Un desperately wants and needs the opportunity to meet again with President Trump. Kim Jong Un needed some imagery to tell his people, things are fine, we're still friends, I've got it under control. The North Koreans would have loved imagery of Kim Jong Un slowly making his way to the demarcation line. President Trump was there more quickly, clearly more anxious to cross over to the North Korean side. They would have loved that. The idea that an American president wants to step into North Korean territory, propaganda gold.
Suddenly, Donald Trump is walking with Kim Jong Un in North Korea. You know, the first American leader to set foot in North Korea.
Hey! Hey! Come on!
And then They walk back over to the South Korean side. And we did not know that it was truly going to happen. And it was a scene of total chaos.
They're going straight.
Suddenly, it appears that they're going to be going inside this building, and the North Koreans actually try to block the American press from going over. And so Stephanie Grisham, Donald Trump's press secretary, essentially decked a North Korean security guard who was trying to block the American press from following the two leaders into this room.
U.S. rules. No. Stop.
Someone help. I know. U.S. rules.
You know, this was an extraordinary photo op, but it accomplished absolutely nothing beyond the photo op.
There's no question today's meeting was an historic first, but after 2 summits and 1 impromptu meeting, North Korea's nuclear program remains fully in place.
With no breakthrough in sight, in the fall of 2019, the dictator changes course. In a symbolic statement to his people, he makes a pilgrimage to the sacred Mount Paektu, mythical birthplace of the Kim dynasty.
It's not just that Kim Jong Un likes riding horses. There's another purpose here. It is part of the propaganda. He's really focused on a particular king, Kim Jong-un. And Kim Jong-un is a warrior who's often shown fighting off foreign influence and bringing the country together on a white horse. And so it's a way to remind his people that I am the successor of that heritage and I have a right to rule.
Turning his back on President Trump, Kim threatens to deliver a so-called Christmas gift to the United States.
Kim Jong Un was disappointed he could not convince Mr. Trump. I think he realized, okay, if Trump will not negotiate with me, I will make a bigger hammer. So that's a message that I think he wanted to send the world. I will show you how powerful I am. I will show you who's really boss in this neighborhood. And it's me, Kim Jong Un.
October 2020, Kim celebrates 3 generations of his family's rule. His talks with Trump have failed to remove the sanctions holding back his economy. How long can he maintain the loyalty of his people?
덕지들, 하늘 같고 바다 같은 우리 인민의 너무도 크나큰 믿음을 받아 안기만 하면서 언제나 제대로 한 번 보답이 따르지 못해 정말 면목이 없습니다.
In allowing the people to see him cry, Kim Jong-un on October 10th wanted to show that he's human too. He wanted to show that vulnerability. Yes, I am almost like a god and I was born to lead this country, But I'm a father like you. I care about my children like you. I care about our future like you. So it was designed to be a particular show of humility and to show his personality. But I can't help but think it's also theater. And so we are moving into a phase where we have less access and less information because it's so carefully cultivated. He wants to seem like somebody who actually is in touch with his people, but it's very hard for us to tell whether we can trust it.
Economically, they're in very, very deep trouble. Sanctions, pandemic, and floods, all those problems have combined to make North Korea's economy, which was already on its knees, nearly on its deathbed. And yet, Kim Jong Un continues to develop nuclear weapons. I think it's very dangerous because if you are cornered into a position where there really is no exit, then you might look for extreme solutions.
만약 그 어떤 세력이든 우리 국가의 안전을 다쳐놓는다면, 우리를 겨냥해 군사력을 사용하려 든다면 나는 우리의 가장 강력한 공격적인 힘을 선제적으로 총동원하여 응징할 것입니다.
In 2020, Kim unveiled the world's largest mobile intercontinental ballistic missile, nicknamed the Monster. Despite his attempts to modernize North Korea and remake his image, Kim Jong Un remains the dictator of a rogue state that is now more dangerous than ever.
You can't prevent irrational regimes, but you can certainly do everything possible to keep the world's most dangerous weapons out of their hands. I think obviously you have to consider the use of force. I don't think the end of North Korea is likely to be pleasant in any circumstances.
It's thought Kim now has at least 40 nuclear missiles and is close to completing a new secret weapon that would pose a greater threat to the West than ever before.
이제 세상은 곧 멀지 않아 조선민주주의 인민공화국이 보유하게 될 새로운 전략 무기를 목격하게 될 것이라고 각언하셨습니다.
They're building a new 3,000-ton submarine with the ability to fire ballistic missiles.
Once they reach certain technical metrics, North Korea can then put one of these ballistic missiles on a submarine. Submarines are very difficult to track. It's basically a roving threat and a moving target. North Korea can then float that submarine out to the Pacific Ocean and scare the crap out of people in Los Angeles. A whole other mess of stuff that keep people up at night.